It was back in May of this year, and my family and I had been living in Nashville for a few months, and me and Ethan, we are huge hockey fans. Now, living in Nashville was pretty hard because we are huge Blackhawk fans. Okay? Any Chicago Blackhawk fans out there? Yeah, there's a few, okay. I knew we had entered into a bad territory when one of the games, before the game I'm going to tell you about, one of the games we went to, we were there with 16,000 people, and they were on the Jumbotron showing people in the crowd. And all of a sudden it zoned in on this little kid. I mean, we're talking like 8 years of age, 9 years of age. And he was dancing on the Jumbotron, and he's looking at the Jumbotron, and then all of a sudden he turns and goes like this. And on the back of his shirt was Kane, which is a player for the Blackhawks. And all 16,000 people booed him out of the stadium. It was one of the funniest things, but I thought, boy, that kid's going to live with a scar forever. But we went, one night, me and Ethan, we decided to do something. Apparently, there's a team in Nashville called the Predators. They're not very good. Don't worry about it. You don't need to check them out. And that was for Trevor, our sound guy. But they got through to the playoffs somehow. I think they paid someone to get through. But they got through to the playoffs, and I turned to Ethan and I said, listen, the playoffs are in town. I can't afford to go and see. Well, I don't want to spend any money on the Predators. So what we'll do is we will go outside, and there is a huge Jumbotron. And we will just go and stand outside and watch the game at the Jumbotron. I said, there'll be thousands out there. It'll be a fun party atmosphere. And wasn't I wrong? When we got there, there was about 20 people outside. This is outside the stadium. And there's the Jumbotron. And so we're standing there, and it is freezing. I mean, we've got hoodies on, and we are just freezing cold. So there's Ethan. We find these two or three chairs. And so I said, listen, Ethan, let's just sit in these chairs. So literally, we are sitting in these chairs watching the game. And we noticed about halfway through the first period, there are 3 periods. You're going to get a lot of lessons tonight, okay? 3 periods. And we're sitting there on these chairs, and we notice that there are people leaving already, which it is the Predators. So people are leaving already. And I turned to Ethan and I said, hey, it'd be funny if we could get in tonight. And he's like, Dad, we should ask someone that's leaving if we can have their tickets. And I said one of the most stupidest things I think I have ever said. We are sitting outside in the cold with 15 drunk people. And I turned to Ethan and I said, we can't leave now. We might lose these seats. we might lose the seats. And he looked at me, and we absolutely just rolled around laughing. I mean, we were laughing so hard. He's like, you're giving up going inside because you want to sit on these seats because you're scared of losing them. So anyway, I started sitting there, and the English inside of me started building up. Now, if you know me, you know I'm pretty good at getting into events for free. We are coming close to the end of the second period. And I look over and I see this couple leaving. And inside, I just kept hearing, who dares wins? Who dares wins? So I'm like, I'm gonna give this a shot. I said, Ethan, follow me. So I get up, I walk over to this couple, and I said, hey, I saw that you're leaving. Are you leaving now for the whole game? And the guy's looking at me like, yeah, I mean, it's the Predators. And so I said, well, could we have your tickets? So they look at each other, the husband and wife. He pulls the tickets out, he hands them to me, and he says, good luck. I was like, oh, that's a challenge. Oh, here we go. So I said, Ethan, here we go. This was my thinking. We now have tickets. There are seats written on the ticket. There are seats that we can now go and claim. Right? This is our seat now. We are going to get in that stadium. I walk up to the door. There's a big sign, no readmittance. I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me. I turned to Ethan and said, we're getting in here. We walk in, go through the scan detectors. I'm Mr. Super Nice Guy. Hey, thank you so much. Thank you. All these people, thank you. We get to this old little lady with the scanner gun. And, I give her the ticket. My hand's shaking. Because I know what's about to happen. I give her the ticket and go, dee-dee-dee-dee. She looks, she's like looking down, she looks up. And she's like, you can't go in here. Can't go in. Well, normally most people would stop there. So me and Ethan wander out. And all night I had noticed this door where some vendors had been coming in and out and smokers had been coming in and out. Obviously the smokers can go back in. So I turned to Ethan and I said, we're going to walk to that door and you walk in like a boss. Head down, well, you can ask him, head down, we are walking in like a boss. And so I just start walking. Grabbed the door, opened it up, walked in, and we are in. Second period has just finished. There are thousands of people walking. And so all of a sudden I'm like, okay, Ethan, keep walking. So we are walking. I mean, I'm trying to get my ticket, trying to find where we got to go. I get my ticket and I said, Ethan, and I stopped. I said, these are season tickets. This is 8th row from the ice at a playoff game. So we said, okay, we can walk right in here. We'll go down there. We'll get into the seat. And we got there. Here's what happened. We had amazing seats. But what happened next was once in a lifetime. That game went to full time, and it was tied. Now in hockey, if a game is tied, they play a whole other period. So it went to extra time, as they would say in soccer. Then it was still tied. So we're sitting there, and I said to Ethan, we're getting a lot of hockey for nothing. This game went to triple overtime. We got to see 4, remember there's only normally 3. We got to see 4 periods of hockey. It went so long, it was on a Thursday night. It went so long that at 12:45 the announcer said, welcome to Friday morning hockey. The game actually ended at about 5-1 in the morning. It was the longest game the Predators had ever had in their entire history. And the crowd were going absolutely nuts. So during the night, me and Ethan were Snapchatting all the way. I just wanted to show you a little bit of the Snapchat from that night.
For Jackman, a shot stick to the corner. That does indeed appear to be the Predators' strategy here. Shoot at the goaltender and follow up for rebounds. They poke it out for Carlson, who was able to clear. No icing here. Nieto comes back, pressuring Jackman.
I think there's more. Because we didn't stay outside. I've just built it up really good. No, okay. Well, it did have me going down with my head and then get into the ice and be able to see this whole game. And it was amazing. After, though, I started reflecting on that night. That night had become one of the best nights in mine and Ethan's history. Literally, we still laugh about the time we got into the Predators for nothing, 8th row from the front, and it went for hours. It was an amazing night. But what would have happened if I had have stayed in this chair? What would have happened if we'd have sat there? I can tell you what would have happened. It was getting so cold that we would have left a lot earlier. But instead, we got up, we took a chance, and we saw history being made. We saw people going crazy. It was their night of their lives. For the Predators fans, they had never seen anything like it. Now, for Blackhawks fans, we see a lot of things like that. We win all the time. But for the Predators, this was new to them. Tonight, I want to talk to you about a few people in the Bible that decided to stand up, decided to rise up, decided to get out of the chair and do something. So tonight, I want us to look at two passages, one in the New Testament and one in the Old Testament. The first one we're going to look at is in Mark 10. This is an amazing story about someone who rose up. Mark 10:46. Then they came to Jericho as Jesus and his disciples, together with a large crowd, were leaving the city. A blind man, Bartimaeus, was sitting by the roadside begging. When he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to shout, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." Many rebuked him, told him to be quiet, but he shouted all the more, "Son of David, have mercy on me." Jesus stopped and called him. So they called the blind man and said, "Cheer up, on your feet, he's calling for you." Throwing his cloak aside, he jumped to his feet and came to Jesus. "What do you want me to do for you?" Jesus asked. The blind man said, "Rabbi, I want to see." "Go," said Jesus. "Your faith has healed you." Immediately he received his sight and followed Jesus along the road. Countless times in Scripture, God challenges individuals to make a move. God will never force you to do anything. He's not that type of God. Now let me paint the picture of what was going on here. Jericho was a very busy place. It was a transitional place. A lot of roads went to and from Jericho. From Jericho, there was a road that went to Jerusalem. This road would have armies coming in and out of it. This road would have merchants and people that were trying to sell things coming in and out of it. Pilgrims going to different places would come through Jericho. It was a very, very busy place. The Good Samaritan, we all know the story of the Good Samaritan, was on the road that was going out of Jericho. So that road was also a dangerous place, a place where gangs would jump on people, especially those that had products that they were trying to get through to Jericho. But at the entrance of the city and at the exit of the city, there would always be the sick. There would always be people that were begging. It was a prime spot for them because people were coming and going. Jesus had a very busy schedule. And in fact, right before he is on his way to what now was his death, the disciples didn't know that, but he was going through Jerusalem to get, through Jericho to get to Jerusalem. That's what was happening when Jesus encountered Bartimaeus. But yet I love what happens here. It's loud, it's busy, it's a city environment. People are running to and from. It's a very busy time of the year. And Bartimaeus decides to rise up and shout. He heard Jesus was coming by. This was his one shot. And so he shouted. And then the scripture says they weren't paying attention to him, so he shouted even more. He wanted to get Jesus' attention. Just a side note, it's okay to shout at God. In a respectful way, it's okay to tell him how you are really feeling. This has happened to me many times. The day that I'm lying in a bed in Australia where I have blown out my knee from stupid Australians taking me out in a soccer game. And now I'm about to fly home 26 hours on a plane on my own and thinking that I would never get back to Australia. When I was in that bed, God was hearing how I really felt. And it's okay. He can take it. Or the day that I lost my job many, many years ago, and Clay was just a baby and money was tight, and I was like on my way home and I was so mad, and I'm shouting at God saying, "What is going on? Where are you?" Yes. The day my daughter died, that was the day that God had got an earful. I remember sitting in the garage, or garage as we would say in England, in the one-stall garage in Peoria Heights, and this song came on the radio, and it just blew me apart. And I remember just shouting and yelling at God, saying, "What are you doing?" But it's okay. It's okay. Because Jesus actually did it to God as well. On the cross, Jesus is there saying, "Why have you forsaken me? Why have you forsaken me, God?" And guess what? If Jesus can do it, we can do it. But here's the thing about shouting to God. When you shout to God, He is going to answer. Amen. Jesus hears Bartimaeus. When you shout to God or ask Him what's going on, He'll hear you. But you've just started a conversation with Him. He wants to enter into your life when you shout at Him. It's not a one-way street. And Bartimaeus now has Jesus' attention. Jesus calls him, and I love verse 50. It says this: Bartimaeus, throwing his cloak aside, he jumped to his feet, came towards Jesus. I love this. This guy is like ready. He has probably been sitting there so long waiting for Jesus. Now he's got his chance. And so with full abandonment, he takes his cloak off, he throws it down, and it's like, this is my time to get face to face with Jesus. He was ready to drop everything. The disciples that were around Jesus had seen this before. They had been in his place. They may not have been blind, but they wanted Jesus so bad that when he called them, they dropped everything as well. It was more than a cloak. For some of them, it was their fishing nets. For some of them, it was their livelihood. For some of them, it was the family business. They dropped it all to get to Jesus. And this guy drops it all just to hear and get close to Jesus. He's ready to do whatever Jesus tells him. Let me ask you this. Are you ready for God to tell you anything to the point where you would change your direction in life that you think you need to go? You see, we chase the American dream, but sometimes we forget to ask God if it's His dream for our lives. We chase after the money, we chase after the titles, we chase after everything, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if God hasn't told you to do that, if God hasn't driven you to do that, then you're wasting your time. You will not be fulfilled. I know tonight, just from last night and tonight, that there are people here that are thinking, God, I thought I was going to be doing something with my life this way, but after Mission Peoria, you are moving me this way. It may be that you're changing colleges from one college to another because now this college is driving you towards ministry. It may be that college has now got to go to a side. And now you're going to intern at a church, or you're going to go on the missions field, or you're going to go with Youth with a Mission or some organization. But don't get into a place where you don't hear Jesus calling you back. If you call to Jesus, be in a place so that He can talk back to you and direct you. Jesus hears him. Now, Jesus says something that is pretty crazy. Like, if I was one of the disciples, I'd have been standing there like, say what? Because Jesus says to him, what do you want? Now, I think it's a little bit obvious. The guy is blind. But Jesus says, what do you want? He's wanting Bartimaeus to be specific with his need. And sometimes we can come to Jesus and we're like, Jesus, just help me. Well, that could be like making sure that you get fed today to getting your permit next week. I mean, we have got to get so specific with Jesus that we're asking him for what we want. He turns to Jesus and he says, I want to see. In Philippians 4:6, it says this: be anxious for nothing, but in everything, in prayer and in supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God. It's okay to ask God for things. Now, I'm not saying, it's the whole name it and claim it type of thing. I'm not on about that. I'm on about for your life, you've got to be able to approach Jesus. Because he's saying, what do you want? What do you want with your life? Are you serious about following me? That's what he's saying. For us as a family, we are living this out right now. This whole be anxious for nothing. This whole thing about being thankful. Many of you know, the last 6 months, our family has been on a bit of a crazy journey. Back in January, I accepted a position at a church in Nashville, Tennessee, one of the biggest churches in the country, with a huge vision for Nashville. When we were down there, things were going really good at the church. They'd already launched 3 dream centers. Their aim while I was there, we were part of this big brainstorming session, was in the next 5 years, they will launch 22 dream centers in the Nashville area. So things were going great. But some stuff happened back in Peoria with our families, especially with medical stuff, that just unsettled us. It wasn't that we weren't enjoying it, but it just unsettled us. So I said to my wife and the kids, I said, listen, why don't you guys go back for the summer? You've got Mission Peoria coming up. There's some camps that the kids can go to. You can be with your dad. Teresa's dad had a scare with cancer. So they are driving from Nashville to Peoria. About an hour and a half into the journey, I get a text from my dad. And he said, Andy, the Dream Center director has just resigned. All of a sudden, my ears went up. And I said, Dad, I've learned so much down here in Nashville. I've learned so much from this church and these amazing leaders. But I need to come home. And I said, I don't know how we're going to do it. I've just bought a huge house with a massive mortgage. We've got to pack everything up. But I just feel it's right. And the leadership here invited me back as the director of the Dream Center. Once we put our house on the market with a realtor, we sold our house in 2 hours. Well, I haven't finished yet. For $25,000 more than I paid for it 3 months earlier. And we just felt that's God all over. And so we've packed up. But this verse, I am living right now. I'm totally being honest with you. Be anxious for nothing. We're homeless right now, so our dog is at someone else's house in the city. We've got cats in other houses in the city. And yet this verse is saying be anxious for nothing. And when I read down, it says, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving. Yes. With thanksgiving, let your request be known. This week's been amazing for me. Not just because I got to come back to Mission Peoria and I didn't think I'd be here this year. This year, Joy, my daughter, sneaked in. She was a little young, that's okay. Sneaked in and she was able to do her first Mission Peoria ever. Then I look on the stage and there's Ethan drumming and Clay is playing guitar. Then this week, my wife has been with me all week long. She is the one that has washed, with some help, washed your shirts every night. I'm saying, God, thank you. That it may be hard, and we may not have found a house, but yet we can't be anxious. God is going to provide for us, and we're going to get that home. But it's easy sometimes to preach messages, and you never see the other side of what's really going on. And I wanted you to understand that this message I'm preaching tonight is more for me than any of you lot. And if you enjoy it, that's fine. But I'm just preaching what we've been going through. So what do you want? I tell you what, God has heard this last few weeks, mine and my wife's list of what we want for a house. And for you, it may be what you want to do with your future. But what do you want? Here's the crazy thing. Jesus asks him what he wants. But what he wanted, only God could fulfill. Let me ask you this question. Are you ready for the impossible? Are you, in your life, ready for the miraculous? Do you leave room for God to invade your life? Bartimaeus had done everything that he could do. He had got to the city. He got into a place where a lot of people came past him. He knew that one day Jesus was going to go by him. He started to shout out to Jesus. Jesus tells him to come to him. He's blind, but he starts to walk towards his voice. Then Jesus tells him, "What do you want?" And he tells him. But up to that point, Bartimaeus had done everything he needed to do. But now, he needed a miracle. He needed the impossible to happen. But Bartimaeus put himself in that place where God could do a miracle in his life. Tonight, I'm going to take you on a bit of a journey so that you could be in that place where you get to that point where the only thing that can happen next is a miracle. You've come to Mission Peoria, you have experienced the night rallies, you've been with kids during the day, you've done amazing things with service projects, you've positioned yourself. But now we want the miraculous to happen in your life. Let me explain it another way. I want to talk to you through another passage in the Bible, and this one is in the Old Testament. It's in Joshua 1-4. Moses is dead. He's gone. Joshua is now in charge. It's time for the children of Israel to go into the promised land. The only two people that stood at the Red Sea when it parted, only two people that were there was Caleb and Joshua. It says it in Numbers. The whole generation was wiped out in 40 years because of their disobedience. So now Caleb and Joshua is standing in front of a new generation. These guys had never experienced any of the miraculous stuff like the Red Sea parting. But now Joshua is faced with another body of water. He's probably like, God, what is going on? Every time I want to go into the promised land, we come in front of water. They're now at the Jordan. The children of Israel are so close to the promised land. They can see it. It would have been easy for Joshua to turn to Caleb and say, I've done this before. I saw Moses do this. I know what to do. There's a formula to this. It could have been easy for that, but no. Joshua has to get alone with God. You see, before, Moses stood in front of the Red Sea and lifted up his staff, and the waters parted. Now they're standing in front of the river, the Jordan River, and they've got to get across. But God does something different with Joshua. Joshua 3, verse 8 says this, "Tell the priests who carry the Ark of the Covenant that when you reach the edge of the Jordan River, go and stand in the water." This time is very different. Before, all the weight is on Moses to lift his rod. Now, the priests, which represent the 12 tribes of Israel, now they have to go and put their feet in the water. They have to make that step of faith. Could you imagine what those guys felt like? Like they are walking up to the water and they're thinking, what happens if when we put our feet in, nothing happens? Every act of faith will always be followed by a great moment of fear. When God challenges you to do something and you go to do it, there will be a moment of fear. It's living on the edge. It's stepping out of your comfort zone. But they had to make a move. Just like me with the chair. They had to make a move to the water. They had a choice to make. Let me ask you this. Are you ready for the miraculous? That can sound really super spiritual. But what it really means is, are you ready for God to do something in your life that you can't do? Because it'll only happen if you rise up, if you do something that God's telling you to do. If you read Joshua 3, it says that the Jordan was in flood stage. The Jordan is normally pretty low, but at this point it is in flood stage. It is raging. And so they decide to go and step into the water. They're standing on the edge of a miracle. They have the choice to now make. Do we go through with this, or do we just stay here and go through a bad cycle of what they have seen their ancestors do and stay in the wilderness? They had to do something. And I feel God's going to be telling you guys to do something so that you can get a miracle. It may be that you have to stop visiting certain websites in order for a miracle to happen in your life. It may be that you have to stop hanging around certain friends so that God can do a miracle in your life. It may be that you have to set some boundaries with your boyfriend or girlfriend so then God can do a miracle in your life. It may be that you need to start treating your mom or dad better so that then God can do a miracle in your life. It may be that you need to start spending time with God alone so then God can do a miracle in your life. And here's a hard one. It may be that God wants you to get even more consistent and involved in your youth group so that God can do a miracle in your life. I've noticed it. I was a youth pastor for a few years here. And I'll be honest with you. What amazed me was, especially with kids who go to Christian schools. This isn't just in Peoria. Saw it in Nashville as well. You think that because you're around teens your own age at school all day long, that you don't need to then go to a youth group. But there's something about going to your local church and being connected to your local church and people within that local church. That you could be in that youth group and God does something miraculous right there in your youth group. So I challenge you, not just kids who go to Christian school, anyone, get involved in your youth group. Some of the best memories in my life are from what we did in youth group. Some of the best experiences with God in my life were in youth group. You've got to get connected. You know, in 1997, seems a long way away, but it wasn't. 1997, there was a young man that got his job back at a company that we all know. His name was Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs got his job back at Apple. And he decided to not sell just computers. At Apple, he wanted to change the whole mindset and the culture, not just in his company, but in the world. The mindset was he wanted to change the world. And so in 1997, Apple do this commercial that is pretty crazy. I want to show you that commercial so that you can see if you saw what I saw. Let me show this commercial.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them, but the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. And while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
What Jobs was trying to do was not sell computers. He was trying to change the mindset that Apple could change the world. They didn't mention computers once in that commercial. Looking back now, there's probably not many people in this room that don't have something that begins with I. iPods, iPads, iPhones, you name it. Back then, no one knew what was about to happen with Jobs. But here's the tragedy with Steve Jobs and with Apple. You can't change the world with electronics. You can only change the world with Jesus. And here's the crazy thing. Jesus chooses us to be a part of that. So I listened to that commercial and I thought, you know what? It's time that we reclaim that back. So this is what I wrote after listening to this. Here's to the crazy ones, the unashamed visionary disciples of Jesus, the misfits, the rebels, the history makers, the round pegs in square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, and even talk about them, but one thing you cannot do is ignore them. But they change things. They lead the human race. And while some may say that they're crazy ones, in them we see God's history makers. Because the people who are crazy enough to think that they can rise up and change the world are the ones who do. Because they're connected to the one who created the world. We have this chance in history to make a difference. Jobs saw that with his electronics, but we have something that far exceeds all of what Jobs can do. We have something that we can carry that has been going on for thousands of years. We can bring hope to people. When you go back to that story, something happened at the Jordan. It says that as they came through the Jordan, something happened. As they put their foot in the water, the river stopped running. And they were able to cross. But in addition to that, something happened back then that we can now see as a testament for what God was doing and is still doing. As they passed through the water, they grabbed a rock out of the riverbed. And they got out of the other side and they went to their camp and they started to build a monument. The monument was designed so that not only would it be a testimony and a remembrance of what had happened to the people there that day, but also it says it was for future generations. It was a date in history that they could remember, that God showed up yet again miraculously, that they crossed through water yet again. And now they made it into the promised land. So as I was praying about this, I felt God wanted us to do something tonight. I felt God challenging me to put you in that situation. For some of you, you're at that place where God's saying to you, what do you want? For some of you, you're at that place where you've now got to make a move towards Jesus. And for some of you, you're at the place where you just now need a miracle. You've done everything you can. You just now need God to do a miracle in your life. I want you to remember this night. The night that God gave you your miracle. So here's what we're going to do. Band are going to be playing a song that I've asked them to sing, and we have set up, I don't know if you can, you probably can't see it, but we have got 3 pools here with water, and in them there's some rocks. It took the Israelites' movement to see a miracle. If they'd have stayed on the side of the shore, no miracle would have happened. They wouldn't have gone into the promised land. And tonight, I know there's people in here, I'm not just talking about young people. I'm talking about me as well. And adults. You need a miracle. You've done all you can. And now you've got to rely on Jesus. So here's what I want us to do. If you're saying, Andy, I want a miracle in my life. I want to rise up. I want you to take your shoes off and we're going to walk through the water. I want you to grab 2 rocks. 1 rock. As you come out, you're going to place it right on here. We're going to form our own memorial. The other one I want you to take home as a remembrance of what you did here tonight. We're not going to force you to do this. If you don't want to do this, this is fine. But there's just an act of, for me, I'm fed up with where I'm at, and I need God to help. So as the band play, you'll come up, there'll be a few guys up here. No splashing, guys. This is a serious thing. We just want you to walk through the water. And as you're walking through, grab a couple of rocks, come out to the side, put a rock where that one is, take the other one, and there'll be guys down there with towels. So if the guys can do that, that'd be great.
Moving
Here's to the crazy ones, the unashamed visionary disciples of Jesus, the misfits, the rebels, the history makers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules. They have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, or even talk about them. But one thing you cannot do is ignore them, because they change things. They lead the human race. While some may see them as crazy ones, in them we see God's history makers. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can rise up and change the world are the ones who do. Because they are connected to the one who created